the suffering that you know is comfortable. Like if you're somebody who's been in pain, physical pain for years and years and years, it's a pain that you know, it's a pain you can trust, it's reliable, versus if it's a pain that could be solved by diet and exercise and lifestyle and stress management, those are new pains that I don't know. So I can stay comfortable here even though I am in pain. The old equation that the pain of change needs to be less than the pain of staying the same for anybody to make that shift for themselves. And so,
welcome to another episode of the Limitless Life Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Smith, and if you have not done so, hit that subscribe button so that you never miss another podcast. And if you love this podcast and you want some more tips and tricks on how to improve yourself, go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel. There are a ton of instructional videos there. You can find the links down below. But before you do that, my friends, I would like to introduce you to Jeremy Grunsteiner.
hey, what's up, guys? Thanks for having me, Kyle.
Yeah, my pleasure, dude. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being a guest, and also thank you for having me on your own show as well. Very, very much appreciated.
Absolutely.
And well, I like to start the podcast with an opening question, and the question is, how is it, Jeremy, that you impact the lives of the people around you and your clients?
All right. I mean, so it's interesting that you asked this because we talked a little bit before we hit record, where right now I'm in a state of flux and change, and one of the biggest lessons learning forward this year is being able to be resilient and follow that flow. And with that, I've been thinking about this question a lot recently, if not been the question that's been at the forefront of my mind. And one of the ways that I impact the people that I work with around me the most is being able to help them be more of themselves, helping them be okay with who they are and being able to bring that forward even more, along with being able to help them find the ways that they're holding themselves back, whether it be through their lifestyle, the ways that they move, the types of activities that they choose to partake in or overindulge in, or is finding a way to really bring them into a balance that drives them towards being more of themselves.
I like that, dude. Bringing out the best of or is it bringing the best version of themselves, or is it that and also removing the beliefs, the conscious or unconscious beliefs of the individual, the cognitive shackles?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much of that at play, but it's also, to what you said at the first portion of that, is allowing so much of their highest, best self, their most authentic version of themselves to come through. And this can get turned into a big discussion of like that hypothetical, theoretical of what is the most optimal, ideal version of ourselves. And ultimately, the thing that I come back to more often than not, especially lately, is allowing that person to just be them. There's so much that we find in social media of people standing in grocery aisles screaming at people to not do this and not eat this and don't do this and whatever. And it's like my approach to this is, well, if that can be true, we can look at some of these mechanisms for health, wellness, behavior, all of these things like, one that gets me in trouble a lot with the health and wellness is like diet soda. Like, no, diet soda is poisonous, and we have all these rat studies that it causes brain cancer. And I was like, well, I'm not a rat, so I don't think I have very much to worry about. Or like video games are gonna, rot your brain, or it's gonna turn you into this lump of a human being, or a less productive man, or whatever. It's like, people can enjoy and like things and find that balance and be able to have it enhance their life instead of take it over. And so that's where I come in with this. Is if you're somebody who really loves video games and diet soda, hey, we can enjoy those things outside of excess, and we can allow those things to come through in a way that serves you versus detracts from the best version of yourself. And we can truly craft that to be your version of what that looks like versus whatever you're being told to that needs to look like. Not everybody, here's a shocker, not everybody needs to wake up at 5 a.m. and jump in a cold tank and then run a marathon. Like, some people, while they could do it, it may actually take away from their abilities to show up better for their families, show up better for their jobs, actually be themselves.
I like that,
and it
man.
takes away this like improvement for improvement's sake that can sometimes permeate us in the coaching space of why are we actually chasing improvement right now? Why is this important?
I like that. I like two parts that I really like on there. I like that you said crafting the person. And I find that, or at least for myself, something that prevented me from progressing and developing my character was the false narrative of an inability to not change, but adjust and character creation.
Yeah.
So when it comes to crafting the person, when it comes to crafting yourself, where do you find is the difficulty for general populations, or even for yourself, when you experiencing you crafting yourself into the person that you are today, to which you're an absolute rock star, bro. You're a rock star.
Thank you.
And talk about that. Talk about crafting the self,
absolutely.
character.
I'll start with a story on this. And so, my personal brand, my podcast, everything's called Weird and Strong. And like, this was something that I stumbled upon accidentally by just continuing to be myself and continuing to lean more into being myself. The thing that I was challenged with the most getting to this current iteration of myself has come from a sense of scarcity. Like, that was the sense of scarcity has always been the thing that pops up more often than not that I contend with to move forward. Growing up, not financially well off. My parents are amazing people and still are alive, still are together. Incredibly hardworking and caring people. And with that, my dad is, he dropped out of school at the 8th grade. He reads around a 2nd grade level. He really struggles with reading and words. And so with that as a background, it's difficult to get a really high paying job in a lot of ways. Combine that with having 5 kids, like the financial side of things can be a struggle. And noticing and seeing for myself of what their struggles were and what I carried forward as lessons, and continuing to heal and relearn and reparent myself through those things. That's one side of it. And also finding that when scarcity pops up for me, it's popped up many times in many ways through my path that I found myself going the safe route. So, for example, I studied music. I was really enamored by being a musician and playing in front of people, expressing myself. I had more than a few opportunities to where I could fully bet on myself and go all in as being a musician. Write the album, record it, do everything that I possibly could to make that a reality for myself. And ultimately, when those times approached, I actually stepped back many times because of a sense of scarcity. Well, this isn't a guaranteed paycheck. I'm looking at my friends who are doing this full time or on the road, and it seems like they're begging money for gas money to get from place to place. And I don't, that feels really scary to me and really unsafe, or like not necessarily like actually physically unsafe, but like it gets outside of that comfort zone of I have at least enough in my bank account to put some food in my belly, some gas in my car, and get to the next day. So through that's led me to all kinds of diverse and unique paths for myself. Like I said, studied music. I studied abroad, lived in Germany. I've worked in the tech industry. I've worked in nonprofit sectors, helping people with disabilities. I've run retail stores in various, sub industries of retail. And now, for the past 4 years and past 3 years full time, I've been a coach. And now, continuing to build myself up. This is a story. This is a sense that's come up again. We talked about a little bit about change of path. For me right now, I'm on this path of building my own business for the first time. I talked a little bit about my dad. He was a trucker. He drove in the oil fields of Western North Dakota for 40 plus years, did some over the road work. When I was in my late 20s, he started his own business. He'd never done it before. And so being able to see that example at a later age and now being able to carry that torch forward, I'm now taking on and learning the lessons that my parents had to learn later in their lives as well, of how do I combat that, or how do I work with scarcity in a way that serves me rather than holds me back. Being able to ask better questions of myself of, am I showing up in a certain way because I'm desperate to get that next client? I'm desperate to make sure that I have money in the bank, or am I showing up in a fully authentic version of myself, and trusting that the people who will gravitate towards what I'm doing will do so? Because when you come at things from that scarce mindset and that scarce attitude, it makes it really difficult for people to identify. People have pretty good bullshit meters, and we can tell when somebody really is. It's like in dating. If you're too desperate when you're working with somebody, or like trying to convince somebody to go on a date with you, it doesn't work. And so for me, seeing this firsthand also in other businesses that I've worked in, or the gym that I worked at until this year closed ultimately because of financial issues. And now working through that for myself of how does this turn into, how do I use this to leverage myself, or leverage that self-development into that next level?
Like that. That's awesome, dude. I thought that popped up to there is scarcity works as a repellent to progress.
It can definitely.
Yeah. I really like that.
One of the things that I learned from another coach that I've worked with, for a good portion, is looking at that portion of yourself, that scarcity version of yourself. Why are they showing up? Why is that version of you showing up currently? They have a purpose. Like, you can, folks who are familiar with the Enlifted method are likely familiar with the Billy story. Billy is your inner evil workout buddy. It's all your worst tendencies. It's that devil on your shoulder. We have also these other parts of ourselves. You have your scarce self, your abundant self. We look at all these different aspects of us. Some of them may be more shadow, some of them may be more light. And we look at, okay, these components are here also for a reason. This scarce version of myself, we can ask ourselves, why are they showing up in this moment? What are they trying to teach me? What are they trying to save me from, or keep me safe from? What is the actual root here of why they're showing up? Can I give them what they need to feel safe, secure? Can I hold that part of myself as a whole being, serve what they need, and still move forward, versus giving in wholesale to what they need. It's like a crying child who's upset they didn't get a piece of candy at the store or something like that. Are they really upset about the candy, or are they upset that they didn't feel seen or heard or understood or cared for in that moment? Sometimes it's just about the candy. Sometimes it's about the deeper care. And so we can take that for ourselves and explore that deeply and show up even better.
I like that. I have this thought where until the until the time we consciously choose to, we will show up for our inner child as our parents have showed up for us.
Mm-hmm.
How have you recognized, or how have you noticed changes in your parenting style to your inner child?
You know, in that regard, I will claim that I'm still a novice, because the thing that has changed for me the most is number one, recognizing that. And that's been the biggest change, because, ultimately we do it subconsciously. We are constantly working with our inner child and parenting them in some way, shape, or form, whether it's conscious or not. And so for me, it's that change into that recognizing when that inner child needs something, and being able to show up with either a lesson or a the proof. So if it's a well, I can never do that, that's too hard, I can show up with the proof of we've done similar things. I've got you. You can
I
do
like it.
this. So yeah, that's the biggest change in that regard for me.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
I was chatting with a client before, and we're discussing a very similar topic. And the thing that was really freaking cool was having a frame of mind where, well, I told him about the process of showing up differently for the inner child. And one of the things that he was really resistant with is adopting new behaviors or doing things that were just objectively good for his health. He was focusing on his health, his physical and his mental fitness. And the thing that his when his inner child started having a hissy fit was when he would force himself to do things without consciously addressing the why and the intention behind it.
Mm-hmm.
So I got him to do this visualization where, rather than him standing up and pointing down at his inner child saying, you have to do this, without any sort of insight or explanation that his inner child would understand, it would get like really tight. There would be a very it would be not animosity, it would be a resistance, like a rebelliousness.
Yeah.
He wanted to stick it to the man, but he didn't realize that he was the man that he was sticking it to in
Yeah,
that process.
that's I feel like you're talking about me right now. So it was interesting. I had a really cool experience. Uh, about a year ago, almost to the date of this recording, I was at a men's retreat down in Austin, Texas, and we were deep in a medicine journey. And one of the brothers came by. He does a myriad of energetic body work, different types of massage, different types of energetic work, mindset work, tantra, like phenomenal guy with so much experience and information. He came over, he's like, hey, do you mind if I like work on your body a little bit? Like I'm feeling something, like I'm like you need a little bit of something. And he'd start, he's doing some interesting. I can, when I go to a massage therapist, I'm like, all right, you got a baseball bat, because that's about the force you're gonna need to make me feel much of anything. Like, I'm a bigger guy. I've got a bit of muscle tissue underneath everything. Like, I've worked with some really strong massage therapists. I've made some of them cry that they're like, I've never worked so hard in my life. And meanwhile, I'm full mouth open, snore, like having the time of my life. And so he's doing interesting things like getting his thumb up inside of my cheek muscles. And I was just like, all right, I'm here for it. And he sees something coming through. Or I was like stifling, like holding something in. It almost looked, it was like something like a laugh. He's like, it's okay to laugh. It's okay to be, it's okay to have a feeling. It's okay to laugh. And, or maybe it was the other way around. Like maybe some sadness was coming through. He's like, it's okay to cry. It's okay. So they started laughing. So I did the opposite. Well, it's okay to laugh too. And start crying. And he's like, oh, you got a bit of something a little rebellious about you. And I was like, people who know me are like, oh, you think? Like, but I've never considered myself necessarily as like all that rebellious. And like, I was pretty follow the rules kid. I tend to want to follow the rules but definitely if there's something that isn't necessarily legally mandated or like given that specific path, I will buck against it in a lot of ways. I mean, I've got a pirate flag behind me. I've got a pirate ship tattooed on me. I have a tattoo of the Star Wars Rebel Alliance symbol that says Rebel Scum underneath. I was like, okay, all right, I guess maybe I am a little bit rebellious. And having that same sort of lessons for myself of, you know, when I'm finding that resistance of, it's almost like I have to dare myself to go the opposite direction, or being able to explain it to myself in a way that allows me to be fully bought into whatever needs to happen, whatever lifestyle change, whatever exercise program, whatever types of exercise. You know, I'm a weightlifter. I don't like doing cardio things. So finding the ways to convince myself that getting my heart rate up to, you know, above 160 beats a minute once a week is actually going to be really beneficial for me versus, you know, saying, well, anything over 5 reps is high intensity or like high intensity cardio or long distance cardio. Being able to help provide the mental gymnastics necessary to convince myself of those things, even though I know it's true. How do I actually deeply believe it for myself as well now? And then also with that, I've been digesting this book, Existential Kink, for a while now, since we last saw each other in person back in October. And you know, how much of our own successes and failures come from whichever version we're already bought into. In this idea of being rebellious to yourself, or having to convince yourself or talk to your inner child in a way that allows them to feel seen and heard, that they can be bought into your success as well, or whatever you need to do to achieve success. Taking a look at the things that you're struggling with the most, some of your tendencies, some of your beliefs, and being able to take a look at, are you secretly in love with failing? If you're feeling disgusted by how your body looks, feeling overweight, are you secretly in love with being how you are currently? That keeps you exactly right where you are? Are you secretly in love with being in pain with your current state? Many times we're so bought into our own failures because we can't actually see and believe in our successes.
Damn. Can't actually see or believe in our own successes. Can't actually see or believe in our own successes.
We may be able to say it, but we can't actually get there to actually feel it as if it's already happened. We don't know what it feels like to succeed. We know what it feels like to fail. So we can stay in that comfort zone. And even though we really want to succeed, say it's, you know, somebody who's never been able to lose weight or keep the weight off, because they don't know what that's like. They don't know what that feels like. They don't know what that's going to do for their lives. They don't know what that will what those effects will be. And so it's the gain and lose the same 20 pounds over and over and over and over again, because they're secretly in love with the failure. They're secretly in love with being the person who's 20 pounds heavier, and then going on the journey, win, fail again, back and forth and back and forth.
I like that.
Because if we were only in love with the winning and only focused on the winning, we would never backslide and gain those 20 pounds back anyways.
Right. Yeah.
Something that's driving us towards that.
Oh, I really like, what was I reading? Have you ever read The Four Agreements by I believe Jose Ruiz?
Yeah.
Don Jose
I'm very
Ruiz?
familiar. I'm very familiar with it. I haven't fully read it myself. I've listened to like the abridged synopsis of it.
Nice.
Because we were at the gym that I was the director of operations for. We had a book club, and that was one of them. And so I was like, well, I need to know something about this because there's talk about this. And so I'm very familiar with it, but I have not read the full thing.
Fair enough. His son wrote a book, where is it? Wisdom of the Shamans.
Okay.
And really cool book. Really cool book. I actually read that one first, and then I listened to the audiobook because there's only like an hour and a half on YouTube. It's on YouTube for free, and it's freaking sweet. And something that he speaks of repeatedly comes up is our addiction to suffering, and how humans are addicted to suffering. And something I think is really cool, a really cool kind of question that I ask myself is, how is it that this particular state of suffering benefits me? So if it's like if it's I'll just go with drinking on this one. How is it that although in the past I would know the adverse effects of alcohol consumption, I would still do it? And it had very much to do with that addiction to that suffering. It's like, here I go again. I just can't quotey fingers do anything because I'm addicted to this suffering rather than the potential of the success. And how I reframed it is that I kind of put it as discipline, where it is both a struggle and suffering to be both disciplined and undisciplined. It is a struggle and suffering to be disciplined in the sense that we maintain a routine day after day, and that is difficult. There's a form of struggle, and we have to change ourselves in order to adapt to that particular change. And then to be undisciplined also has its own form of struggle, where we stay the exact same, which also brings its own form of suffering and struggle. And I think when, at least for myself, when I'm looking at the different varieties of suffering that I'll dabble into, I recognize what it is that I'm actually doing, and it's everything serves a purpose. And it's for my suffering, or previously more so, significantly better now because I'm more consciously aware of it. I'm trying to practice myself out of that suffering tendency, and shifted my form of suffering to the suffering of progress, and becoming a little bit more addicted to that form of suffering. And that's been a good one. And with that suffering, with that addiction to the suffering, with that headspace, where do you find yourself addressing it, or how do you find yourself addressing it and then reframing it or readjusting it so that it serves you rather than hinders you?
Yeah, I mean, this is a wonderful question because it leads back into some of the things we've talked about already. Is looking again of this, for me, personally, it comes back to this sense of scarcity as well, or like not feeling, I guess safe is the word I want to use, but it doesn't quite feel whole there. But like the suffering that is comfortable. Like if you're somebody who's been in pain, physical pain for years and years and years, it's a pain that it's a pain you can trust. It's reliable. Versus if it's a pain that could be solved by diet and exercise and lifestyle and stress management, those are new pains that I don't know. So I can stay comfortable here even though I am in pain. The old equation that the pain of change needs to be less than the pain of staying the same for anybody to make that shift for themselves. And so looking at this in making change forward from a sense of scarcity, or you're familiar with the marshmallow experiments that they've run thousands and thousands of times,
I'm actually
replicated
not.
with kids. And I'll probably butcher this because I don't have it all at my fingertips of the exact details of the experiments that they'll do. But they will give a child one marshmallow with the promise of more marshmallows if they wait until the adult returns from the room. So you got one big marshmallow with the promise that you could have, 2 or more marshmallows at a later date. So there's so much of a sense of scarcity that plays into this from that we see in the experiment, is that more often than not, they will take the one marshmallow now. And I'm sure that there's much to be said about that from the research of what's actually happening under the hood. But all we have is the current moment. And so if I it's a gamble if I roll the dice that there are actually going to be more marshmallows in the future. Because we're geared towards survival. We're not geared towards resource hoarding necessarily as humans, because hunter-gatherers, you gather enough, but there's no guarantee that there's going to be more and that you may need to move on and get more at a later date. So, if you look at even our metabolic systems, if you're somebody who's disciplined in their diet, perhaps an athlete, and you go on a binge fest and you eat as much as you possibly can, your body can handle it because it's also going to view that as excess and shut it off. So at this deep level, we have this ability to know that there's some scarce resources coming, or we know that scarcity is an issue, so that we'll eat that marshmallow now versus wait for the more marshmallows. And we look at change. It's so important to know that the things that I'm doing today, I won't see the benefits from for weeks, months, maybe even years. That's why investing is hard for a lot of people as well, or saving. It's this all comes back to this sense of scarcity. And I believe that this is something that really holds us back from making positive change in our lives, period.
Agreed.
Yeah.
To pivot a smidge from scarcity, where do you find abundance in your life?
Yeah. For me, I come back to one of the reasons I started a podcast myself is in human connection. I look back at my experiences over the past decade plus. The amount of jobs that I've gotten based off of just purely apply and get into the running. Like, I'm not even sure I have a single one that I can really put in the front of it. Like, it's all been about personal network. So it's been a bit like I've been a referral to work. Somebody else works there, or somebody knows somebody that works there. Like, hey, you should talk to this guy. He'd be a really great addition to your team. And so for me, abundance is always in human connection and continuing to cultivate and build more human connection, because it's what helps. It helps not only me become better, resources, knowledge, experiences. It also allows others to experience the same as well, because it's that same old adage of a rising tide raises all boats. And so when we can continue to have connection and communication, our experience as humans increases and improves so much better, especially in a state where, in doing market research for my coaching program, the thing that I've come to the most is this deep sense of sadness and loneliness, where people think and feel that they have to go everything alone, and that there's not enough, and it's continually finding ways to reach out to people and have conversations helps to keep me in abundance rather than scarcity. For example, like last week was a very challenging week for me. Travel issues and all kinds of other things that have been happening in my life. And the simple act of reaching out to people, having conversations, and knowing that, I have an awesome podcast that we're recording right now with somebody who's really rad. And I had a coffee earlier today. I had a great connection with one of my other coaches and friends, and this past weekend, and continually having conversations with people and getting those connections and continuing to build that forward. It's a whole different world this week over it was last week. Last week it was easy to fall into the trap of believing that I'm alone, and that all this pain is just all this pain and suffering that I'm experiencing currently is what life is always going to be like. And that if life is always going to be this way, then why even continue? Or like why not just take the easy path, or go back to working in a corporate tech job, or why even struggle? And there's a weird tangent, but you know me.
I dig it. I love it.
I love things weird. There's a song that's been coming up over and over and over again for me, like over the past 6 to 8 months. It's a song that I heard many, many times, but I never actually I heard the lyrics. I never really paid attention to them. It's like, did I actually hear them, or did I even know them? And I always cringe at saying this, because growing up in the late 90s, early 2000s, there was always the at least where I grew up, there was always the cringy Tool fan.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yep. And so I always no, I enjoy the music, but I'm not going to be like, this is so amazing and brilliant, it'll change your life, But this song keeps coming up, and it's called Parabola. And talks about, this body holding me, this reminder that I'm not alone. This body holding me, feeling eternal, that all this pain is just an illusion.
Damn, I'm gonna be listening to it right after this one. Yeah, that's for sure.
There's so much, that it talks about, this reality. We've chosen to be in this reality. If we want to get real deep into this, of what we know of our perception of reality, like my perception, I have no way of knowing that my perception is anywhere close to your perception. I have no way to prove that one way or another. And having a great conversation with somebody very recently about this as well, of being able to recognize the uniqueness of your experience, and because only you can have this experience. It is your reality. Your perception can change. We talk about, in the world of words and stories and breath, that's what we're doing, is we're looking to change the perception of something that may have happened. I'm not denying that it happened. A traumatic event can be still traumatic, and you can turn that into a post-traumatic experience that builds you up rather than tears you down. And so knowing that, my understanding of reality is only based off of my perception, what can I do to choose a reality that serves me best? What can I do to choose a reality that builds me up towards the future? What is a way that I can choose a reality that builds up the people around me and keeps them feeling abundant as well?
I like that.
Yeah.
Damn, I like that.
All from a Tool song.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
You know
we
what?
get,
Maybe they are as great as they say, or as the
I
cringe fans say.
yeah. I mean, there's stuff like that. I pull
Uh,
back to also like, I grew up being a big old nerd. I still am, big old geek. I love all things like science fiction and um, anime, and grew up a lot of video games and fantasy novels. For me, Star Wars has always been a big mainstay. And like there are many times I come back to some of the wisdom that comes through. Like George Lucas was, you say what you want about him and some of the goofy things that he's done, but there were some deep, interesting wisdoms that came through in what he was bringing forth as how the universe is tied together, and is this great work of fiction that still has a lasting effect, because there's still people who are deeply in love with the idea of Star Wars. And so there are genuine deep truths of not only the hero's journey, but how we can relate to ourselves and different parts of ourselves in building us towards a much more balanced future.
I like that. I on that note, I also have a Qui-Gon Jinn is definitely a mental mentor of mine.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really digged his stance where it was there's the light side and then there's the dark side and then there's neutrality in the force.
Mm-hmm.
And aiming for that neutrality is when you're going with the current of the force or going with the current of life.
Yes.
And that's very much so when I'm going through my own little bits of struggles.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm if I'm all aboard the struggle bus, I'll go for a walk and I'll just kind of envision Liam Neeson, Qui-Gon Jinn just walking next to me and then just like chillaxing and then just helping guide me.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's yeah, Star Wars is freaking the best, man.
Yeah.
Uh,
And I mean that, like it also, exactly what you're talking about is like this balance aspect of it, because we can bring ourselves to this monk mode type of like, I'm going to go as um simple as possible. I'm going to renounce possessions or go as minimalistic as I want to, um and like spiritually bypass all kinds of things in the idea that I'm going towards my highest best self, but in the meantime I'm actually ignoring all the shadow aspects of myself, to where they come out in a very immature way, or I give into hedonism and all of the shadow sides of myself that keep me stuck and keep me down. um, the danger of the dark side isn't necessarily inherently that it's rooted purely in hatred and anger. A big portion of it, the leader to it, is passion, is and it comes from a deep root of caring in a very immature way. We look at the story of Anakin Skywalker, and it wasn't necessarily that Anakin was inherently evil. Is that he was a sad little boy who was taken away from his mom and had such a deep caring and love that he couldn't express as a Jedi. And so his passion for other people and his passion for life took a dark turn because it wasn't allowed to be expressed in a way that was mature, caring, and loving. He had to hide it and shove it away.
I like that. On the note, well, I say on the note often, but to pivot slightly, although I love Star Wars, but
Yeah.
to pivot sort of, but not really. So your podcast and your business is weird and strong.
Yes.
How is it that you actually, how are you weird?
Yeah. I
What
mean,
inspired it?
so the story behind this is, I actually have the postcard here somewhere. So I was just recently telling this story again. Um, the gym that I was working at. So this was the fall of 2020, so November of 2020, American Thanksgiving time. We as a staff, we had just made a major shift in our business, in the gym, of no longer being a CrossFit gym, going to a much more individualized program and methodology towards helping people really, really live the best versions of their life. And we had a small little Thanksgiving party gathering with the entire staff, had a nice little meal. And as part of it, we wrote little notes of gratitude to each other. And at the time, one of the fellow coaches, I had just started coaching him in Olympic weightlifting. He and I had been training partners and lifting buddies for years prior to this. And he wrote a very nice note thanking me for my dedication and how hard I worked. And he's a farm boy hunter, and like, as far as polar opposites, I'm there. Like, he was an athlete. I was not an athlete growing up. I was into theater and music and nerdy stuff and kind of goofy stuff, and like my music choices. I was really into like goth and punk and hardcore, Soviet art music, and like stuff that's just not exactly the mainstream. And he always thought that was really, like, a lot of the stuff I was into was kind of weird. And so he signed off and it said, keep being strong and weird. I had I like to hoard things like that. Again, this connection with others is a way to keep abundance in my life. So it's nice to revisit those from time to time. So I keep them all the time, all the notes and thank yous and everything that comes across my desk or mailbox. I recently found it about a year ago, just a little over a year ago. And I looked at it and I saw that end, stay strong and weird. I'm like, oh, like, I was contemplating starting a podcast. And so that's where the name originally came from, was through that. And anytime I would bring it up to people, were like, yep, that sounds like you. My path is anything but conventional in so many ways. I've tried the conventional paths of jobs and careers and schooling. I dropped out of college twice. I've done so many things that I have been interested in or loved, or been in, like, just felt a calling for in the time. My path starting in high school was actually leading towards the military, to go into the Air Force. I was in
That's interesting.
an auxiliary of the U.S. Air Force called Civil Air Patrol, and started that when I was probably before I was even a freshman in high school, before the 9th grade, and did that all the way through to my senior year. Ultimately decided that wasn't going to be the world for me, and graduated high school, moved off to Germany. Something that most people wouldn't necessarily do. They graduated high school and I'm going to go back to high school. So that was kind of a weird thing anyways. Studied music and theater, dropped out of school to manage a video store, bounced around into some retail jobs, went back to school for music, dropped out again. Like, just an interesting path that kept going forward, ending up in technology as a web engineer, project manager, development manager, and then getting into athletics and lifting in my 30s. So it's just a path being. I often joke that I've had many past lives within this one, and that's something that is quite interesting and unique about me. And knowing that if I have a unique story to tell, and my path is a bit unique, I know that others have their unique paths as well. And the more that we can showcase people doing unique and unconventional things in the world, the more that it normalizes them to follow their own dreams and follow what they want to do, what they feel called to. Again, we could come back to this idea of being scarce. I turned down the call to adventure more times than I would care to count or admit. There's always been the constant call towards adventure, to make your own path, blaze your own trail. And I always said, no, not right now. I don't have enough money. No, I don't feel secure enough to do that. And so if there's one if I that's my one experience, I'm guessing and making an assumption that there's a great many other people who feel the same. And so when we can normalize people doing that, it can help build everybody up to a much more important or a much more impactful future. One of my missions and one of my deepest tenets of life is a phrase that can be interpreted in many ways, but in general, I interpret it this way. It's the Hebrew phrase "tikkun olam." It
What's it
refers
mean?
to it refers to the age to come.
Mm.
You can say that as the future. You can say that as heaven, or you can interpret that in many different ways. And ultimately, to gain your spot in the age to come, is that you need to heal the world. My view of this is the way to true immortality is to make an impact, to make a ripple, to change the lives of even one person around you for the best. Because that carries forward, whether they remember you or your name at all, doesn't matter. Your deeds, the way that you showed up made an impact that it changed their life, and that changed the lives of their children and their children and their children. That's the way that we achieve true immortality, is that through our actions and through who we are as people, we can impact positively so much more than we even give ourselves credit for. The ripple effect is real. So respect your ripple and allow it to ripple out as far as possible.
I like that. Mm. I like the thing that I like about our conversation today is you're speaking, at least for myself, I feel it within my soul. And I feel it like emotionally. I feel it in the solar plexus, where what you're saying is rippling, is resonating, and it's speaking a lot of, I think it's speaking a lot of common denominator truth, where it's something, it's raw. It's like, I imagine it like clay. You're speaking words and of experience that I believe many people can very much resonate with. And in hearing it, I think what it's doing for me is it's bringing in that sense of abundance, where there isn't that sort of that loneliness. And there's something very freeing about that when someone else speaks on their experience and it pulls those kind of feels up. And it's interesting because it's a very somber, very it's interesting because I think it's so common that nobody really speaks on it. And when things are not spoken about, they're not addressed, they're not conscious, there's no awareness.
They can become stigmatized at some point and shunned or ignored.
Yeah.
And what does that turn into? What types of behaviors and what types of societal or personal issues come from something like that? And like ultimately, so part of my personal journey involves I became a coach and working in health and fitness. I never touched a barbell until I was in my 30s, and somehow still made it to the national stages of weightlifting, in the Geezer League, and with like coaching and lifting it in both. And for me, I got to a point where, because I hadn't had that athletic background, that I was, I stopped looking at the scale and stopped caring past 275. I know I got past that 300 mark. For sure. And in that was a lot of hanging out all the time, from happy hour to bar close, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Eating out the whole time, getting snacks. And you know what I would do when I would get home? I would order a pizza or order some food or whatever, like ultimately I looked at that and I was like, well, why do I keep doing this? Like, drunk, half asleep, falling asleep, like eating more food and feeling overstuffed and overfull and falling asleep while you're eating and then waking up and continuing it, even though you're feeling so full that you physically are feeling sick. Like, now I see that in a very different light, and I see that in a very different version. I'd gone on vacation last year, and picked up a book called On Connection, and it spoke very directly to this. And like, I read that. It's a short, easy read book, and it spoke to this of like these issues that we see with like overindulgence in alcohol and food and TV and insert thing. Ultimately comes from this lack of connection to self. It's like I was uncomfortable. I was feeling really uncomfortable with where I was. I haven't been able to answer the call to adventure that I've wanted to for so long. I wasn't willing to take risks in a lot of ways. It was numbing that feeling of feeling disconnected from myself because I didn't know what that actually meant. It didn't feel real to me. And so even though I was out with friends and having a good time, I felt more alone than I ever had felt before. So much of what I talk with other people when doing market research and talking to people out in the world is that even in a space of being so well connected, we still find a way to be alone together. And when we still feel that deep loneliness and that lack of connection to ourselves, it's no wonder that we have issues with eating too much or eating foods that aren't nutritiously supportive of our lives, not exercising, not moving. Because I think you referenced this earlier, is that even though we know these things, you're talking with a client, like we can know these things, we don't have an information problem by any stretch of the imagination. There's so much information infinitely, quickly available at our fingertips. And now you can even just ask a machine. You don't even have to type anything. You can just ask your phone something. It's going to give you an answer. We don't have an information problem at all. People know generally what they should and shouldn't be doing. Like they know what foods are more supportive of their health than not. Most of them will know that a plate of broccoli with a lean protein is going to be more nutritious than a whole pizza. Like we know these things, and yet we'll pick the pizza almost every time. And the pizza to excess every time. So what's underneath there? What's actually driving that? And my hypothesis is that we lack quality connection to ourselves. To know that when I'm feeling an uncomfortable feeling, when I'm feeling less than, when I'm feeling unsupported, unsafe, scarce, when that shadow self or those shadow aspects of ourselves are being very present, having a better connection to that whole person to say, it's okay. Why? What's actually coming up here? What do they actually need? And how can we move forward? Versus I'm going to numb it with whatever substance comes my way.
I like that. Lack quality connection to self.
Yeah.
Lack quality connection to self. How have you found to be, what are some methods or tactics that you have used to foster a better connection with yourself?
Yeah. Great. Great question. For me, it's writing things down. I and many of the people that like I grew up around and I've worked with in the past, um, it's easy to stay stuck in your head. Keep the story, keep everything playing in your mind. And it's many times a struggle, especially for for me to get started with it and for others, especially men, of writing those things down. Just getting them on the page, getting them on paper. When I noticed that struggle of lack of connection to self, where I don't even know what I want anymore. I feel like I'm getting in my own way all the time. Oh, I haven't journaled in a while, or I haven't just brain dumped at the end of the day to unload that processing power in my brain. I've got, just like on my computer, I have 1,000 tabs open and I don't know where the music's coming from. It's like, okay, we need to shut everything off for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And that's where meditation can be a great practice. If you don't know how to meditate, find 10 minutes of quiet alone time where there's no distractions, there's no music. You're just sitting and being with yourself for a small amount of time. Going for a walk with no real aim, with no devices, no music, those types of things. The more that you have that space away from everything else is where you start to foster that connection with yourself. And those are the easy ways to get started. Writing, walking, quiet alone time.
I like it. I found for something I've been playing around with more often is reflecting on. I actually had a cool conversation with my mom on this one. So the things that took us no effort when we were children are very much so indicators of the things that we could do presently, where we can just find ourselves in the flow state, where we are able to just bring that back. So I asked my mom what sort of things did I do as a kid that could be a hint or a indicator of things that would create or foster that stronger connection within myself. And one of the things that I found is walking was one of those things for sure. And then also creative outlets. So creativity. Yeah. And I think that that's something that as we age, we veer away from that childlike wonder and those creative outlets and that sense of adventure that children have, where kids are just present. And in that presence, we find peace.
Yes.
My creative outlets were drawing, walking, going outside, and music. And those are things that I've been incorporating more this year than I have previously, because I've been aiming for a better sense of self, a better connection to self. What are some of the creative outlets, or what are some creative outlets that you have used or do use or could use that could foster a better connection with yourself?
Well, this one's gonna be a little bit redundant because it's exactly the same as what you just said. Being a musician, so being able to just pick up an instrument and express what's coming through is great. It's amazing. My path when I was studying music at university was towards composition, and so even being able to write something out in notation or pop it into a composing software and express that way as well is fun and interesting and amazing. And drawing, I've been working my way back into bringing that back into my life as well. Everybody says this in one shape or another. Like, I don't find myself particularly gifted in that area, but I do it for the enjoyment. I'm not looking to become an artist. I'm really good at trying to turn whatever I love into a job, and I've avoided turning that one into a job so far, which is great. Um, and yeah, walking, like my my version of vacations or even just travel and adventure is so drastically different than everybody else's. I would imagine. I love nothing more than going to a new city or revisiting a city with no plan and just strap the backpack on, make sure I have what I need, and just go in a direction and see what I can find. Uh, so yeah, walking, drawing, and music are key components for me to foster those as well. And it's interesting for me because you talked about childhood, and I look back at the time that I spent in Germany because those were the three things that were so present for me then. You know, in a place that I'm not a native speaker by any means, or as fluent as everybody else around me. There's still um, a barrier to some of my communication, um, or just just feeling like a bit more of an outsider than I'm used to, or we can retreat into ourselves for better or worse. So I joke very often that I'm a recovered swoopy haired emo kid because that was definitely at that time of year, that time of my life. Yeah, I know you get it. And
Yeah.
the writing aspect was something that was very present as well. And even though it could take a very, oh, woe is me, live journal-esque type of writing where, anybody who was around during those days knows how whiny some of those live journals were. um, and I look back though at so much of what I've learned since then, and I felt so much more connected to who I was and who I like at my core at that time than any other time in my life. And it was an accidental stumbling upon because I had a lot of time to myself, even though I was experiencing new things and experiencing new culture and talking to new people that I would never have gotten to know in otherwise. There was still, because I'm outside of where I'm from or feel comfortable or what's home, quote unquote. It made it so that I had to find a better connection to myself to understand and know what was true for me. Do I actually like this thing that I'm eating, or do I think I don't like it because I don't like the way it looks or whatever?
Mm.
Um, am I uncomfortable asking a question right now because I don't know how to ask it, or because I don't want to ask it, or I'm afraid of the answer? Like you start to get much more in tune with what you want and need when you have to uh when you're not even sure where you can get it.
Ooh.
You know, if you're used to a water fountain on every corner of your school building, and then you go to a school and there's no water fountains, and you start feeling like you're dying of thirst throughout every day, are you going to ask where you can get some water, or are you going to just tough it out? So you start to learn a lot about yourself in those ways. Um, and again, I was always had the headphones handy. Back in the day when you had to have a CD into your Discman. Dating myself a bit. There's no iPod, like that came out after. Um, and I loved to draw. I still have so many of those drawings from that time period in my life, and it was just an easy way to express myself. And then grab a guitar and pluck something out, and being able to express and being in an expressive state foster that self connection so much.
Mm.
It was so fun and so cool. And now being able to look back and go, oh, I was on something back then. All right, how do I continually cultivate some of that, more of that in my life today?
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that, man. Damn, that's good.
Some weird
Well,
adventures from the weak to
dude,
strong.
Some weird adventures. The strong and weird adventures. Yeah. I like that, dude. I really like that. I think I'm probably going to do a brain dump after this and just kind of flush the mind of ideas of that internal connection. I think yeah, this episode here is going to work as my journal prompt to deep dive into my own psyche and really ask myself the question of where is it that I can really step up my connection game. I think that, like, it's interesting because as you're speaking it, I don't know, man, you're hitting some strings. And I feel it. And I'm excited. I'm not like fearful at all. I'm excited to kind of dive into that and kind of pick apart that bit of curiosity that you kind of planted in my mind. So I want to thank you for that, dude.
You're welcome.
Absolutely. Yeah, I want to thank you very much for that. That's going to be a cool one.
If we can connect to ourselves better, we can connect to others even better as well.
Absolutely.
If you want to get a little more esoteric with it, it's like, well, there is no Kyle, there is no Jeremy. We are all one being having a conversation with itself. So if I can understand myself better, I understand you better.
Absolutely.
If I understand myself, why would I do harm or why would I do violence to myself, even when confronted with that self in another being?
Absolutely. That was one of my mushroom trip lessons. Was seeing this is a cool one, is seeing myself within others. And what that kind of unlocked was a higher focus on compassion rather than judgment, because now I understand. It's like, oh crap, like the things that I both admire and resent in that other person are the characteristics and traits that I have had myself. And I think that, I totally agree, man. Like, we're just two folks that are a part of this universal consciousness, this sense of being that we believe, or we've been told, or we adopt either consciously or unconsciously, the story that we are so unique and we're special snowflakes. And it's like the whole world has to change externally in support of our subjective internal existence. And I do believe that is when we probably feel the loneliest. And going with what you were talking about with connection, flipping it, and rather than having that judgment, having that compassion to the external world, walking around like you own the place, because you do, and then being able to uplift and strengthen that connection.
There's something that's come forward for me more than a few times over the past year, and that is again on this topic, or this idea that many of us are feeling this sense of loneliness, of disconnect, of being alone together, is excuse me, it's almost as if we're all coughs.
All good, homie.
Just want to know it's a good one. Is remember back in high school when like the cool kids would have a party? It's almost as if we're all waiting to get invited to the cool kids party. We're all standing by and waiting. We could just start the party ourselves.
Nice.
And invite everybody else to the party.
I like that.
Yeah.
I absolutely like that.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, be your own cool kid and invite everyone to the party.
Yeah. If everybody else is waiting, because you're waiting, Somebody's got to start a party somewhere.
Yeah, and everybody's looking for a party.
Yeah, exactly. Well, do you have a party? No. We don't even ask. We're too afraid to ask. We're just like, well, if they like me, they'll ask me to show up, I guess.
That's totally legit.
Hey, motherfucker, just start your own. See who shows up.
That's awesome.
It's more opportunity for connection, more opportunity for abundance for everybody involved.
Totally agree. Well, my man, we're at the top of the hour.
Hell yeah.
Is there anything that has to be said that hasn't been said yet?
I sign things off usually. Just stay strong, stay weird. It's the most important thing. Just be yourself, because that's truly one of the most weird things out there.
Nice. I have 2 questions I like the end of the podcast with. The first one, for the context, as you're having your little coughing fit. Oh, no, don't be passing out on me, man.
No, I'm here. I'm all right.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So for context, it's the end of your days. You're on your deathbed. You're about to kick the bucket. The people that care for you, that you love, are around you. What piece of advice do you want to pass on?
That's a phenomenal question, man. I would say, it comes back to the things that I hold so deeply now, is continue to improve the world, continue to make the world a better place, and show up as you. The world wants more of you.
I like that.
Don't be selfish. Share yourself with us, because everybody wants to see it. We're so used to showing up as a different version of ourselves, or what you think you want to meet, or what you show up as what you think I want you to be, versus just showing up as you. And so just the more continually that you can be more of yourself, the better everybody else is going to be as well.
That's legit. Yeah, those are some true words, dude. And then the final question, the very best version of you is sitting next to you right now. What piece of advice does he have for you during this season of your life?
I feel like it's cheating, but it's the same answer. I was reflecting on this earlier with somebody very close to me, and it's the more and more that the challenges of starting a business, especially a coaching company, is sometimes you feel like you're being inauthentic, or you're like, well, I don't really want to speak to this right now, or I feel like I'm not speaking in a way that aligns with who I am. You're like, I'm talking about weight loss, and I don't really believe it's about weight loss, or like calorie. Like, yes, those things matter, but like ultimately being able to speak to a deeper topic like we've done today is what lights me up and makes me excited and what I want to share. And so it's the more that I can be that person and be excited about the information that I'm sharing, and not just a marketing version of what I like, top 3 tips of how to blah, blah, blah. Those are the things that are going to matter for folks. And those are the things that people who get it are going to get it. I'm not looking to be a mass market anything. Again, if I can change the world through one person, I'm going to do it. And that's what I continue want to aim to do. So be more of yourself, be weirder, be that weirdest version that you're afraid to be on a daily basis.
I like that. Well, folks, you heard it here today. Keep up the weirdness. That's also what I got for you in today's episode. Where can people find you, Jeremy?
Yeah, the Weird and Strong podcast is available on all major podcast hosts. You can find it on the Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and many, many more. You can also connect with us at Weird and Strong on Instagram, and or at weirdandstrong.com.
Nice. Well, folks, if you love today's episode, please do me a favor right now. Take a screenshot, share it on your Instagram stories, and tag me with my handle at DapperDudeKyle, along with at Weird and Strong. That is one of the ways that we grow. And until next time, keep up the kindness, and I hope your day treats you as good as you look.